it's gonna do like some split screen.
Okay.
Okay, I believe we are recording right now.
Yeah.
And if I hit that, okay, so I can pause it whenever
Okay.
and share screen. Interesting. I'm just looking at this. Oh, no,
Yeah.
I'm just playing around with it. 1 sec.
Okay.
Okay, we're rolling. So I
Cool.
believe when the recording, how it works is that, and it's recording right now.
Yeah.
When I hit the X button to like cancel out, then that's when we'll stop recording, I believe.
Okay.
And so then I'll have a chance to save it and then I can send it out and everything.
Yeah.
But I'll probably edit it on Adobe before I do anything
Okay.
else, like sending it
Cool.
out. But anyway, so we're rolling. Welcome to Run the Damn Ball. I'm your host, Daniel Magnuson. Today we are teaming up with Huskers in enemy territory, Christopher Bjork. We're on Zoom today. And Christopher, when I started my Twitter, I believe about 5 years ago. Was it 5 years ago? 4 years ago? Actually, want to restart that for some reason. I should ask how you're doing before we get going, just because I feel like that's kind of polite. Okay, we'll restart. Okay, so welcome to Run the Damn Ball. I'm your host, Daniel Magnuson. Today, we're teaming up over Zoom with the man who runs Huskers in enemy territory, Christopher Bjork. Chris, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So, Chris, you and I have been in contact over Twitter for, I believe, 4 years now, because I started doing this Twitter in 2017. And I think you mentioned that we were talking a bunch when we lost to Iowa in 2017 in like one of the worst games we've ever seen. And so, I think what happened was, from my knowledge, I still consider myself as like a small, Twitter, even though I've had you as well. We've both had like some really good growth over the years, and it's been really fun. But at that time, 2017, I started, and you were someone who I feel like was always, interacting with my content and like commenting, liking. So I was like, okay, this is someone who's like, I can talk to him about whatever, because he sees my content a lot. So I think you're like the main Husker fan. Whenever there's like any rumors or like I have any theories, you're the kind of guy I go to. And so that's fun that, we're able to do that. And this is actually the first time we've ever talked in person, because I never met you in person, but we've been in contact for a few years. So that's been fun.
Yep. I think what is neat, in my opinion, is that like when I first started my like Huskers in enemy territory, and even before that, like I was trying to just figure out like what name I wanted to go with, and I finally did settle on this, is that like we've always been in contact ever since like that first time, when I first made a Twitter account, so I think that's what's real fun about this,
Mm-hmm.
So
I just remember, and I've probably mentioned this before, maybe on my YouTube or something, but in 2017 we lost to Northern Illinois. And I believe that was right before or right after the Oregon. I think it was right after the Oregon game. And in that Oregon game, we didn't play very well, but we only lost by 7, and we shut them out in the second half. So that was like okay. But shoot, I'm actually gonna look that up real quick. Did we play Oregon before or after Northern Illinois? Because that Northern Illinois game was, I think you're right. That Northern Illinois game was the worst game I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's because Northern Illinois was so bad. Their quarterback was bad. They're off. I think they had 2 pick sixes on us, and that's the only. And we were so bad.
Okay. And you know what? And normally I don't like watch my football games like my dad, right? Because my dad's always yelling at the TV.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I felt like I was my dad watching that Nebraska game, because I was yelling not only at like the quarterback, but I was like straight up yelling at like the coaching staff and everything like that. And my wife, because she's a Hawkeye fan, she had to leave because I was getting so mad. It was kind of funny in a way, you know.
It's so
So,
depressing.
oh, it was, yeah,
That season was worse than any season we've had, besides maybe 2007. But I was so young then that I don't really remember that much. But it was
yeah,
so bad because Northern Illinois was bad.
yeah,
And we were like just as bad because I remember we were driving on them like the first drive of the game, like easily,
yeah,
and it's like we're in the red zone and we throw a screen pass to DeMornay, who's a really
yeah,
good player, and they pick it off. And
yeah.
like if the quarterback would just look, he would have seen, instead of just throwing like brainlessly, he
Well,
would have seen the guy coming to get the ball.
and the problem was, and I believe what uh the quarterback did, and that was or what was his name?
Tanner Lee,
Tanner Lee.
so bad.
See, Tanner Lee threw it on the instead of throwing it to the sideline, he threw it on the inside hash mark, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the cornerback was going to be able to pick it off.
Mm-hmm.
So if he would have just thrown it straight towards the sideline, it would have been like a good to go. Like either like the wide receiver was going to get it,
Or
or
he
it would have
get
been
or
going
get
out of
hit pretty
bounds.
hard.
Yeah, but he
Yeah.
threw it on the inside shoulder or whatever you want to call it. So the dude was just like, "All right, pick six, baby."
Yeah. And I don't want to be like negative, but it's just okay. Like Tanner Lee, I'm not trying to like go after the guy.
Yeah,
Mike Riley's staff brought him in. He was supposed to be a good quarterback. Like honestly, he had some really good like plays especially with Stanley and JD as the receivers. Like he could throw the ball. He even
yeah,
got drafted in the NFL. So like he could throw the
yeah,
ball. I'm not trying, but he wasn't. With the team we had Divino Zigbo at running back, who we saw the next year was really good and had
yeah.
shown flashes, and we hardly gave him the ball at all.
I
If
can't
we
believe
gave it
that.
to him, it was like maybe a draw. We would like almost never give Divino Zigbo the ball. Mikhail Wilbon was like a starter, and like he was more of like he was decent, but he was like a scat back. It just wasn't a good offense because it was built so much upon like, okay, maybe we'll run it here for like 3 yards, but then we're just gonna throw all the time.
Yeah,
And
it
similar,
was
like
just such a weird offense.
it just wasn't for Nebraska. And like Bill
Uh,
Callahan's offense was better.
yeah,
And remember we were playing Wisconsin and we actually were competing with them that year, and it was a competitive game until the fourth quarter. We threw a pass in the flats to Divino Zigbo, and this is in 2017 for y'all listening. And it went right off of Zigbo's helmet and
I
bounced
remember
into
that.
a Wisconsin player's arms,
Yeah,
linebacker like or something. Took it all the way, like 80 yards.
yeah.
And then like all the momentum we had gone. And it's just stuff like that. So anyway, so that season is why I made a Twitter. I don't know if you made the Twitter in the same year, but it was kind of how I coped with how bad we were. That's why I
I
made this
don't know.
Twitter, was because
I
we
don't
were bad
know.
at football.
I don't know what like the one moment was when I was like, I'm gonna try this Twitter thing out. But I just remember being like, what do I want to really talk about? And I was just like, you know what? I want to talk about Nebraska football and just Nebraska sports. But I do want to like sprinkle in everything else that I really enjoy. But I just felt like the main focus, I wanted it to be Nebraska
Mhm.
because that's usually what I always talk about, you know? And it just kind of coincided with the fact that I was like, oh my God, we need to talk about how bad Mike Riley is
Get
as
him
a football
out. Yeah.
coach. Because I think the real point for me when I like kind of like coming to Jesus moment of like I want to get rid of Mike Riley was the Purdue game for me, honestly. We ended up winning the game, but the whole game we just looked like, we didn't want to win. We didn't want to like even compete in the game really. It was just like it felt like just like dumb luck that year. You know what I mean? You remember that game?
I actually had a homecoming. I was a senior in high school and I didn't end up watching the game. That was like one of the only games I've ever missed.
Yeah.
But I just remember we won and I was like, of course we won because I wasn't watching.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm David, my brother David, he went to University of Nebraska and he graduated that year. And he was talking to Stanley Morgan one time because they were like playing basketball at the rec. And Stanley even told him before that season, like, "Oh, we're gonna be bad." Like, and
Damn.
Stanley was probably smoking everybody in practice too.
Yeah.
He was like the best player on the team, and he told David, like, "Yeah, we're gonna be bad. Don't expect anything."
Yeah.
And
Damn.
so I was like, "Dang." And the thing is, there were even games that were winnable though, like Northwestern, we should have won that year. Northern Illinois, we should have won that year. You could probably list some other games. I don't really remember all of them, but anyway, let's jump off 2017. We don't really
Yeah.
want to talk about
That
that
was kind of
anymore.
depressing.
Yeah, it kind of was. So, you know, we've talked about how we got into Twitter. You got into YouTube this year, and I did last year. You know, what was sort of like your inspiration there?
Like honestly, I think one inspiration for me in YouTube is the fact that I don't really see a lot of Nebraska YouTube channels. You know what I mean? And like I wasn't really getting like the content I wanted from YouTube in terms of like what I wanted to hear from like Nebraska personalities. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just do my own thing and just kind of have a little bit of fun with it. And I'm kind of glad that you made your own YouTube channel because now I can listen to you and hear what you have to say. But now I kind of have been finding a little bit more content on like YouTube Nebraska or whatever you want to call it. But like honestly, that's kind of the reasoning behind why I started mine. I don't know what why you did it, but
Yeah, I just know this is kind of funny. I've never brought this up. This is like 2010 that this was going on, but I
okay.
remember watching like there was basically like a dad and a son, and they would like
Uh-huh.
react to every game, and they were just like two dudes.
Yeah.
And you know, I would watch them when I was like probably like 10, 11 years old,
Yeah.
and I was like, I was probably like 11, and I was like, this is cool. And so I kind of when I started the YouTube last fall, and you know, I didn't even know if I was going to do that, but then you know, the Big Ten season's rolling around, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll start making videos and I'll react to every game. And I
Yeah.
did that with you know, someone that my brother was friends with, and I did it with my
Uh-huh.
brother, and that was fun. And so, and it was kind of just like you sit down at a table and talk. It
Yeah.
was simple. And then it kind of evolved from that into like, okay, maybe I want to like make YouTube videos, kind of like some other people do. And there's some other Husker YouTubes that are pretty good that
Yeah.
I'm always so bad at remembering the names of them. But and then now I'm sort of in a transition to like, okay, I want to do a podcast, something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm transitioning to right now. And so that's fun. But yeah, that's kind of the inspiration. I just sometimes I'll get ideas and I'm like, all right, I'm taking off with this right now. I'm doing this. So
Sure.
that's what that was. But so your
Kind of
name's
wanted to I kind of wanted to do it like, you know, in terms of like sitting down and like talking like if you were at a bar in a way too. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel like when I make my videos, I'm like, hey, you know, I ask questions, you know, in my video too now, you know, and I'm just like, hey, what do you think of this situation or that situation? So I'm trying to like engage with like whoever might like come on and actually talk to me in the comment section or whatever. So like it just feels like you're almost at the bar
mm-hmm,
talking football, right? So
exactly.
I just yeah, so I just thought that would be kind of a cool way to go about making YouTube videos, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's cool. Like we talked for probably like 25 minutes before we even started recording here, and I think both of us we've said this multiple times. Um, this is just stuff we do for fun. I'm not trying
Yeah,
to make this like anything like official or like I'm just
yeah,
doing this for fun. Like this is fun for
yeah,
me. So
yeah.
and you're the same way. And I like also like your name, Huskers in enemy territory, because you aren't you from like near Iowa City?
Yeah. So like it was funny. Um, one of my buddies was like, you know, it's a perfect name because you are literally in like, you know, the heart of enemy territory. And I was like, yeah, well, like the way we kind of me and my buddy kind of came up with the name was that like obviously I like the Huskers, but like it was kind of a play on like my military service too, because like I was, I went to Iraq or whatever, and he's like, you know what, you could kind of have like your Huskers name, and you have like you've literally been in enemy territory, so like
Yeah.
it would be a fun like play on both like subjects in a
Hmm.
sense, and like it actually like works too because I live in Iowa, so
Yeah. So your family's from like Western Iowa, is that what you've said?
yeah, yep.
And wasn't your family like Husker fans growing up?
Well, like at least my dad and my great grandpa,
Yeah.
they like, and then like I do have some family that did live in what is it? Grand Forks. Is that what it is called?
Is this in Nebraska?
Yeah, Nebraska.
Oh, Grand Island?
Grand Island, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had a great aunt that lived out there. So we do have a little bit of Nebraska ties, but basically like where we lived in Western Iowa, we literally only got Nebraska news, right?
Yeah.
We didn't get Iowa news. We just got Nebraska news. So like anytime we would watch like stuff on TV, it'd be like, hey, Nebraska Cornhuskers this, Nebraska Cornhuskers that. And when I was growing up, it was during like the heyday, 80s and 90s. So of
Of
course I'm gonna
course.
like the Cornhuskers. Why would I like the Iowa State Cyclones or the Iowa Hawkeyes?
Yeah.
Those two teams absolutely sucked during the 80s and 90s. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. In comparison to Nebraska, there was no comparison,
Yeah,
especially from Iowa State. There
yeah,
was really no comparison. So you mentioned you went to the military. Was that during the 2000s?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And
I enlisted in August of 2000.
how are
So
you able to keep up with, the news and Husker football and all that when you were over there?
man, it was really hard because basically you don't when you're deployed at least you don't really get newspapers, right? Or
You didn't have a
whatever.
smartphone, of course.
No smartphone. TV was pretty much non-existent. I mean, we the only national I watched the national championship game, Nebraska versus Miami in 2001. But other than that, that was the only national championship game I watched the whole time I was in the service. So that
Wow.
was like from 2000 to 2005. Other than that, like I don't really recall watching any Nebraska games just because of situation.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really have an opportunity because you don't have like the streaming services like you do today, like with Hulu or whatever. That would have
Mhm.
been wonderful if that was the case, but it just was like straight cable TV back then.
So it probably made you appreciate, like, being able to watch Husker games and the availability that we have today as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think
That's
it makes me appreciate like just even going to games because I did go to a few football games out in when I was in California. I watched like USC versus UCLA. I watched UCLA versus Colorado State while I was out there.
yeah.
So I did watch some college football like live, but obviously I didn't really have much of an opportunity living in California to go see a Husker game out there.
Mhm. So you kinda I think a lot of I personally felt this, but not being able to, because it seemed like we weren't gonna have a season this year, which sucked this past year,
Yeah,
and it was kinda like everybody got thrown for a loop and weren't able to watch games. Well, you kind of already went through that just because of your, where you enlisted and,
yeah,
the commitments that you had. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Um,
Yeah,
so
I'd
yeah,
almost say I went like 5 years without like really watching Nebraska football, honestly,
hmm yeah.
which kind of sucked, but you know, it is what it is in a way.
And I guess you
So,
probably didn't miss a whole lot, being that, I mean, I guess 2001 they were good, but
yeah,
I think after that they fired, Solich, they hired
yeah,
Callahan, and then nothing
yeah.
really happened ever until Bo kind of got us for a little bit.
I th-
But
I think. I think the only regret is that and like whenever I see his highlights, I'm like, oh man, what if he would have been on like the 94, 95, or 97 team was Jamal Lord. Like that dude could play. Like I think
Yeah.
he's like one of the most underrated quarterbacks that we've really ever had because like he was like I just felt like he was like a one man wrecking crew. You know, when I go back sometimes and watch his like highlights on
Yeah.
YouTube, I don't know. I don't know what you think about Jamal Lord, but I just think he was like one of the most underrated guys that we've ever really had.
He was before my time because
Uh-huh.
I was born in 1999. The
Okay.
only Husker football player I even knew by name until I was, going to school was probably Eric Crouch
Yeah.
because I had a little electric football
Uh-huh.
thing
Okay.
that my older brothers had, and so they would always be like Eric Crouch, and so I was
Uh-huh.
like
Okay.
Eric Crouch, and I had like an Eric Crouch jersey number 7. So
Yeah.
if there was a Husker football game on and I was like 5 years old, I'd be like, "Where's Eric Crouch?" And they're like, "He's not playing," and I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Okay," and that'd be it. So, the first Husker football game I went to was in 2005.
Okay.
That's when we played Michigan, and I was 6 years old, and I don't. That's when I became a fan, where I was like, okay, this is like my team, uh,
Yeah.
just because it was such a good experience. And I mean, you're 6 years old, you don't care about football when you're 6 years old, but it was a
Yeah.
really good experience where I was like, I felt a sense of belonging. So, but that was when I guess that would have been Zach Taylor was QB, and
Okay.
Jamal Lord was a few years before that, so I never remember
Yeah.
watching him play. I was too young.
Yeah.
And then Jamal Lord, I got bored one day and I watched, I believe it was Jamal Lord's first start in 2002.
Okay.
And they were playing against Arizona State in like their first game of the year. And it was like his
Yeah.
first start. And I just think I'm going to tell you this story because I think it's really interesting and it shows how far uh, broadcast journalism has come. But
Uh-huh.
Jamal Lord was a good player, and it was exciting to see him. It was like the option. He was running it right, left.
Yeah.
And he had really good mobility. It wasn't quite on like Tommy Frazier or Eric Crouch's level, but it was cool to see. I'd never really watched him that much.
Yeah.
And so, but there was this weird interview that I believe it was on ABC or ESPN.
Okay.
They did because they were talking about Jamal Lord,
Yeah.
and I guess that like he had lost his father when he was young because his mom and dad moved, or they didn't move. They vacationed somewhere in like Central America, and randomly
Okay.
his dad got murdered by some like random dude in like Central
Oh,
America. Like maybe it
okay.
was like Panama or some country that they were vacationing in. So he lost his dad at a young age, and then they're interviewing his mom in the stands during the
Yeah.
broadcast. Like the game is rolling, and like maybe there's a
Yeah.
timeout, and they interview his mom, and then like the reporter like talks to the mom like, and she's like, he's gonna go NFL, and he's like, all right. And then like the way they closed the interview was super weird. And you have
Okay.
to go watch this on YouTube because there's like the whole
Yeah.
3-hour broadcast. But he like brought up the fact, like he, without even mentioning it to the mother when he was like interviewing her, he brought up the whole like thing where like his dad, he's like, he brought up somehow in a weird way, brought up his dad dying years before. And then you could see her face when he
Yeah.
brought it up. And she was like, what the heck? She
Yeah.
wasn't expecting him to bring that up. And then like they
Uh-huh.
cut, and then they go back to the game. And I was
Oh,
just
damn.
like, this is like 2002. And
Yeah.
like, if they did that, that's not really, no one probably remembers that. But if they did that today and people saw that, just with the way social media is, that
Oh,
reporter would
dude.
be getting flamed.
Oh, yeah.
It was
That
so
reporter
awkward.
would
I
be
felt
kicked.
bad for like the mom because it's like,
Oh, yeah.
why would you bring that up on national television without asking her if that's okay?
Yeah, right.
Come on. So you'd have to go, if you go watch like Nebraska versus Arizona State 2002, you can see that.
I'm gonna look that up now.
Yeah, it was probably like in the first quarter or second quarter of the game.
Yeah.
It was really awkward. I think I find awkward situations like that interesting. Like, how did they mess that up?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of a random topic, but so you're from Iowa, the two teams, major teams there, Iowa, Iowa State. Which team is like more annoying? like the fan.
Now it's like Iowa, just because like I'm just in in Iowa
Yeah,
territory, basically. Like you barely ever see Iowa State fans. But I feel like when we were like Big 8, Big 12, it was definitely Iowa State fans
yeah,
for whatever reason. And I don't ever understand or understood why it was that way. Just because like I think we literally have it was like 81 wins to like 12. And I'm
yeah,
just like, why are you guys even talking to me? You know what I mean? I'm like, you literally have like 100 like percentage winning percentage against us. Like you can't even I don't even know why you're talking to me right now. Like I've literally seen you lose like 20 games in a row to us,
yeah.
whatever.
It's like I get if they want to like trash us for our recent history. Like
Yeah,
we're so used to that at this point. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
we've been bad for like 4 or 5 years. It's
yeah,
like, but if you want to actually like go into like overall history, if they want to bring up history, like recent history, sure.
uh
I'll bring up the overall history if you want to
yeah,
bring up recent history and let
yeah,
you know, like, I'm not trying to trash on them either. Like, they're actually in a really good shape as a
yeah,
program, like right now, which is awesome for them, Iowa State. But like overall, don't even try and like act like we're trash because we destroyed you for 100 years.
yeah.
So yeah, like
And the other thing is too with like the Iowa State history, they're like one of like 6 teams or something that have literally went 0-12, let's say, right? So
mhm.
there's only a few teams in collegiate sports that have never won a game, and they're on that list.
0-12 is so bad.
Yeah. And I think it was in the 80s, I want to say, that they went like 0-12 or whatever, like the game amount of games were. I can't remember what it was, but I remember seeing them on like like when like big game boomer or whatever makes like his little things,
I really
right?
like Big Game Boomer. Yeah.
So do I. But like basically this was like I think made by like Fox Sports, college sports or whatever. But they showed like I think Toledo's one of them. I think the Naval Academy was one of the teams, which kind of hurts. Iowa State was on there. And I feel like there's a couple other
I
teams that were
know
like,
the Washington Huskies went 0-12 in like 2008, I think.
okay,
I think Jake Locker was like a freshman at that time, but they were just really bad.
okay,
That was a weird 2007, 2000 through like 2011 even was just a weird period in football because
yeah,
uh just like the style of play was changing so much because
yeah,
it went from like pro style to like pistol wildcat to like now everyone's spread offense and there's like very few pro style offenses left. And it just changed so quickly. I just overall the past 20 years, football has changed so much.
yeah,
Um, with the way like I at least like offenses and defensive play is it's interesting. I remember watching. I got bored one summer day and I watched the Colorado Nebraska game from 2009, where we had a
okay,
really good defense, and
yeah,
like our offense scored, I believe, 14 points in that game, and their
uh-huh,
offense scored 20. But we had a punt return and a defensive touchdown, so we won 28-20.
yeah.
And
Was that the game where Sue either picked it up a fumble off the ground or
he got an
intercepted the
interception.
ball
That was the year prior.
and then like did almost like the Heisman pose
As he
where he
kicked
like
the quarterback in the
stiff
face,
armed
he tried to
yeah.
yeah, that was the year before in 2008. But
Oh, okay.
the reason I brought up this '09 Colorado Nebraska game is the offenses were so freaking bad.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, we're either gonna run up the middle, and I think Roy Halou was hurt, but there was like, all right, we're either gonna run up the middle, or we're gonna do a screen pass, or we're gonna like do a QB draw. That's literally all that Nebraska could do because our
Yeah.
offense was so bad. And
Yeah.
then Colorado was like, okay, we're terrified of Ndamukong Suh. A running back is like 5'6". we're just gonna roll out and try and throw. All right, incomplete pass. We're gonna punt it because we're scared. So it was
Yeah.
just like both offenses were stylistically so bad, like
Yeah.
so incredibly bad. Like, yes, the
Yeah.
2009 defense was one of the best defenses, like probably of all time, but they went up against some horrendous offenses.
Uh-huh.
Like if the '09 defense goes against like the Colorado offense from 2000 and what was it, 19, where they or 18, where they had pretty good receivers. It would
Uh-huh.
have been interesting, like how would they keep up in that style of spread hurry up
Oh man, I don't know.
offense.
I think that having Ndamukong Suh
And
on
yeah.
the 2019 team, holy fuck. I don't know. I don't know if those boys could have stopped him even then. Those Colorado linemen.
Yeah, now that I think of it, our linemen kind of were blowing up that offensive line that we had, like a few years ago. So it'd probably be our offense, or I mean, that defense would probably destroy really anyone besides Bama would be a good test.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
because I just remember like watching Ndamukong Suh, right? And sometimes he would get double teamed and he would just blow through it. Like it didn't
yeah,
even matter that two people were on him.
I think double teams was like the standard when he was out there.
Yeah.
They had to.
And it just didn't matter. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He was just that strong compared to these guys.
That '09 team is the team that like I was like, I was a young kid and I'd usually just go play outside with the neighbor friends, then
Uh-huh.
watch Husker football. But then sometimes I would watch games. And that '09 team really got me to like become a fan because like a invested like fan at that. I was probably like 10 years old and I was like, okay, this
Yeah.
is my team now because the defense was so good. That's when I started playing tackle football and I was like, okay, these are who I want to be like. So like
Yeah.
Sue and like that entire defense I really idolized as a kid. And Rex was a freshman that year, and that was fun. Roy Halou as well, and so that was really fun to see. And like, who were some like the players you remember when you started becoming a fan and like growing up as a Husker fan, like you idolized and stuff?
I think like the first one I really remember was like Tommy Frazier, like really being invested because I think it was like 1992,
Uh huh.
right? And I was just like, oh, who's this freshman, quarterback or whatever. And like, I can't remember who was the quarterback before him, but like, I was just kind of there watching, you know what I mean? Like we go like out hunting or whatever, we'd be playing outside and whatnot. And like Husker football would be on and I'd be like, oh, okay. Like, we're watching football, but I think it wasn't until like 92 or 93, whenever like Tommy Frazier really came to like Nebraska or whatever. I was like, man, who's this guy? Like, he just was like flashy and like he just seemed like he had like everything going on. And then all of a sudden, like in 93, we make it to the national championship game. And I was like, oh my God, this guy just brought us to the freaking national championship game that I still think we won. And I just
Yeah.
wanted to throw that out there. But like he was just like that guy. And then like it, you know, just I think the team overall being as good as they were, like just really solidified how much I like Tommy Frazier as a quarterback.
Hmm.
And that really just made me a Husker fan at the core, I think, too. And then
Yeah.
just from there it just grew, you
How old
know.
were you? Those '90s teams were around '92 through '95. Like, how old were you at that
Like
time?
when we went to the first national championship game, I was, let's see, so that was like 93. So I would
Hmm.
have been, let's see, 10, 11, 12 years old.
That's awesome that you got to see
Yeah.
that at a young
Yeah.
age.
So like it was always funny, right? Like growing up, being over here on Eastern Iowa, for whatever reason, like a lot of my friends in high school and or like middle school were like they liked other teams besides Iowa. So I think that was one reason why I never really like paid any attention to Iowa
Hmm.
back then even. was that like hardly any of my friends even liked Iowa. They liked Michigan or like Penn State or like Arkansas or whatever. Like it, throw a team in there, Notre Dame or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And they would always like try and talk shit to me, right? And I'm like, dude, we literally just went to the national championship game, right? In '93.
Yeah.
And I like looking back on it, I still think we won it because that last touchdown that Florida State got, if you look at the actual footage, he fumbles the ball into the end zone. So
Wow.
that, yeah. So
There
we should have won
was
that.
there was some sort of I think there was a 1994 documentary on Big Ten Network about the '94 Nebraska team,
Uh-huh.
and they talk about the Florida State game was like a really big like influence on their upcoming season because I felt like they had been robbed. There was a really
Yeah.
good punt return that they returned for a
Yeah.
touchdown that there was some phantom block in the back that there actually wasn't that was called.
Uh-huh.
And so the field goal kick they had at the end was completely whiffed. Even
Yeah.
Bobby Bowden said they shouldn't have won the game. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like that was I got to stretch here. It's kind of like that was a big like motivation. Like we were this close to winning and somehow, we got screwed over.
Uh-huh.
So I remember my dad telling me about in the '80s, Nebraska played Penn State, and there was some like incomplete, out of bounds, clearly out
Yes.
of bounds catch
Yeah.
from a Penn State player, and they called it inbounds. And I've seen the video footage; it was like so egregious. I'm just like
Oh yeah.
stuff like that. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that much in the long run because it's just a game. But it really like if you to the core, you're like that is some BS.
Yeah.
Um, and when we lost to Texas in '09, that's the one of the most memorable like football moments I've seen from like college football. I was at the game and
Yeah.
with the 1 second on the clock, and I'll be honest, I've watched the tape through,
Uh-huh.
and the ball does hit the railing on the side of the stadium at 1 second. I did see that, so I
Okay.
understand why there was 1 second put on the clock, but it's kind of one of those situations, and if you flip the script and it's Zach Lee throwing the ball out of bounds with 1 second left, and then
Uh-huh.
Texas celebrates like they just won, like flip it
Yeah.
that way, do they overturn the call for us?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if they do that.
Yeah.
You don't know. It's kind of like Texas was, the team of the Big 12, Oklahoma as well, kind of like it's just kind of like how we like to think there's a bias, and in some instances there are. Like with Ohio State and the Big Ten rules this past
Yeah.
fall, we were talking about that before we started
Yeah.
recording. That's another thing. There's a certain bias that conferences have for their top teams. So yeah,
See, like that's the problem is though too. Like, okay, so Texas thinks that they're the Big 12. But let's be honest, the Big 12 was Nebraska and Oklahoma. Like
that was the
they
Big
just
Eight.
pushed themselves in, right? They
Yeah,
weren't the Big 12. Like I don't understand why the Big 12 even like considered like thinking that, oh, Texas is the big boy. No, it was always Nebraska and Oklahoma. Like, the officials with the Big 12 really fucked up, in my opinion. Everything.
yeah.
Like
It
just the way
doesn't.
they treat us and all that. Like they really screwed up everything.
It
And
makes sense why we left
yeah,
at that time. And I'm a Texan. I'm from here,
yeah,
and I know how Texans are, and the way they act this way everywhere they go.
uh-huh.
And there's some really nice Texans, by the way, but they kind
Yeah,
of, they have no problem going, walking into wherever they go and how they are and acting like they own the place
yeah,
because, hey, we're Texans, we're gonna do what we want and
yeah,
yada yada yada. That's just how Texans are,
yeah,
and so it's no surprise to me that and they got this big population base and they see themselves as we're the University of Texas. We should be the
yeah,
best at everything, and
yeah,
that's just the way Texans are.
uh-huh.
That's the way they see
Yeah,
themselves. They're proud of being Texan, and they think that they've had this incredible history as a program, and they're not even on Nebraska or Oklahoma's level
no way.
at all, not at
Uh-uh.
all. And they have for if you compare them to the rest of FBS, but they're
Yeah,
not what they think they are.
yeah.
So it's funny when they
It's
say,
like
"Oh, Texas is back. Well, Texas was Colt McCoy, Vince Young. And then
Yeah.
besides that, they had some days, but it really wasn't what they think it was.
So before, and don't quote me on this, but before they won that national championship in what was it, 05 or 06 or whatever it
I think
was?
it was 05, yeah.
Yeah. They hadn't even, I don't think, been to a national championship game since like 1968 versus
Yeah.
Arkansas or something like that.
Dang, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So, and that was even a controversial national championship game. It like I remember watching it on like ESPN when they were doing like the, like that 150 years of collegiate football or whatever. They brought up the fact that it shouldn't have even been the national championship game that year. It should have been between like two other teams, but for whatever reason, out of circumstance, it became the national championship game.
Yeah. The national championship is an interesting topic because it wasn't what it is today, where we have a playoff, or even what
Yeah,
it was when we had the BCS from like, was it 99 or I don't know when the BCS started.
I think it started after Nebraska, Miami in 2002. The
Well,
BC.
I think BCS championship was Nebraska versus Miami in 01. I believe that was BCS.
Oh, okay,
I think it was. I think BCS started maybe in 99 or 2000. I don't
okay,
remember,
yeah,
but we'd have to look it up. But
yeah,
shoot. It was a weird thing because college football was kind of split between, we had your East Coast teams and you had, the ACC type teams. You had the SEC. You had the Orange Bowl that was played by, the winner of the Big Eight, and I believe the winner of the ACC. And a lot of
yep,
times, like the Orange Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl, like, that bowl would decide the national championship because it was
yeah,
like AP would, they would decide.
yeah,
And it was, and I wasn't alive during this time. This is kind of how my dad explained it. But, and this is something that a lot of people look past. But when Nebraska came to the Big Ten, there's a lot of, because Nebraska had played for so many like AP national championships, and
uh-huh.
the Rose Bowl was going on that whole time, but a lot of times the Rose Bowl team wasn't going to get the recognition just
Yeah,
because it was a West Coast type of thing, whereas the Big Ten and the Pac-12, where they weren't going to get the same kind of recognition that, say, the winner of Nebraska Miami was going to get, or the
yeah,
winner of Nebraska and Florida, or the Nebraska versus whoever from the South, and the
yeah,
same with Oklahoma. So there's kind of leftover animosity from Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, these type of fan bases, because we were playing for national championships for decades.
yeah,
And were they the national championship game? No, but we were playing for the title of national championship, and
yeah,
they weren't,
yeah,
because they were playing for the Rose Bowl.
yeah.
And they weren't always considered in the same way Nebraska was, and so that's kind
But
of like a
also,
leftover.
but also when you like kind of look at it, what like Big Ten teams back then, at least like, and I'm trying to recall, were even national championship type teams other than like maybe Michigan and Penn State, right?
I think
And like,
Ohio State had some good years.
I mean, they had all right years, but they had nothing like what they had like
Now,
now,
yeah,
right? And like, and there's a lot of guys that bring up like that Michigan team in '97 or whatever, and like the problem with that is like they had one dude like Charles Woodson, and like their offense was okay and their defense was okay, but in their game versus Washington State, dude, like I still feel like Ryan Leaf kind of got screwed over in that game because they just kept the clock rolling, and I believe he spiked the ball, but
really.
they ended up just like letting the clock roll out, right? And
Didn't know that.
they were in field goal range, and I think if they would have kicked the field goal and got it, they would have won that game. So you would have negated that team altogether.
That's
So you
interesting.
say, so are like a lot of the Michigan fans are always saying, we would have beat Michigan or we would have beat Nebraska, but they don't look at the fact that we just slaughtered Tennessee that had Peyton Manning on it.
Yeah,
I mean, we absolutely destroyed Tennessee that year. I think it was like 42-24. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember that. They're just seeing like the highlights.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, that made sense why it was split, but like, we're gonna claim that national championship, and
yeah,
most people would agree that we were the better team anyway. Um, but I think the main thing that people will bring up is it took Matt Davison
yeah,
kicking the ball, or someone kicking the ball in the air and Matt Davison
yeah.
catching it in
It
the
was
end zone
Davis.
against
Or
Missouri,
Davison caught it.
and someone
Yeah,
someone kicked it in the air. So it took one like a once in a lifetime type play for us to even
yeah,
go undefeated, but we made that play.
yeah.
So
But
yeah,
also, like, I think, and don't quote me on this either. I believe Missouri was ranked ninth in the nation that year.
they were a good team that year, and they actually modeled like their entire like style of play, and their entire program was just trying to copy Nebraska.
Yeah,
And Osborne even told his team before the season started, he said, uh, this is our schedule, and the toughest game is this Missouri game right here. Because he
yeah,
knew. He knew they were
yeah.
going to be good. He had a weird way of just knowing everything. But yeah.
In a weird way, like that's another team that I really miss playing because like Missouri was like I feel like almost another I wouldn't say official rival, but like unofficial rival
They
in a
were
way.
every single team in the Big 12 North is a rival for us. And it's because we played them for like 80, 100, for some teams,
Yeah,
100 years, you
yeah,
know? Um, I like that we play Minnesota now because we actually played them a ton in our history.
yeah,
Just from like way, and like I looked through like teams we've played the most, and they're one of the most. We play Minnesota as much as any team besides like the Big 12 North.
yeah,
And so Colorado's a rival. Kansas State,
yeah.
they're a rival. Kansas, they're a rival because there's Kansas, and we played them so much. And you could say that
Uh-huh.
about every. We play Minnesota. When we play Missouri, we'd play for a trophy, so that is a rivalry.
Yeah,
So I'm really happy we swept the Big 12 North before we left.
yeah,
And unfortunately, we botched 2 Colorado games in the past few years. We
yeah.
will get a
That
chance to
was
revenge those games in the next few years. I think we're
yeah,
playing them back to back. After we play Oklahoma back to back, we play Colorado back to back again.
yeah,
So we'll have a chance to revenge those terrible losses because they were just depressing. We should have won
yeah.
both
They
those
were.
games. But anyway, let's get to shoot, I don't even know how long we've been talking. Let's
Yeah,
get to the big news today. Trev Alberts is now the AD at Nebraska. I think they're probably doing a press conference right now as we speak.
yeah, probably.
So how do we feel about that? You could probably start.
Um, I think overall, I think what I like about it is that he is a former player that played during like the championship era. So like he knows like, hey, we need to be at this level, right? Overall for all sports in a way, but not, you know, especially football. So I think in that sense, he'll be a great hire. But like I think I've talked to you before. Unfortunately, like this is just one aspect that I don't really know a lot about. The whole like athletic department, like type of stuff. You're like, hey, who would you really go after? Some people would ask me, and I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know, steal the guy from Alabama. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
who do you go after for an AD? Like, it's just like one of those things where like I feel like I know a lot more about like maybe who to pick for the next football coach if like things went sour on that. But like
yeah,
with like administrative stuff, like how are you supposed to really have a great opinion on it? You
that's
know
how
what
I
I mean?
feel.
Yeah. Like it's always funny like seeing people be like actually have opinions on it and you're like, dude, you don't know any more than what I know. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like Trev Alberts, he could be either like the greatest AD that we've ever had in our entire history, or he could just fall flat on his face. That's kind of how I feel about it.
I feel the same way. Um, I remember I tweeted right after Moose he got fired. Right after Moose got fired,
Yeah.
I tweeted because I knew that the Nebraska Omaha athletic director was Trev Alberts, and
Okay.
he's switching over to UNL. But so I said, I just tweeted like Trev Alberts, I just had like a freaking Elmer Fudd moment. Trev Alberts for AD question mark, and like few people were like, yeah, but a lot of people were like, heck no, like he got rid of wrestling and
Yeah.
all this other, and like our football program and all this other stuff. So I was like, okay, I don't know, I don't really care, but I know he was an All-American linebacker at Nebraska in the 90s,
Yeah.
early 90s, I
Yep.
believe, and he knows Nebraska, and he's already probably pretty affiliated with the athletic department. I'm not going to try and comment on the athletic department because
Yeah.
I don't know what's really
Yeah.
going on, and I'm also a student at Nebraska, so I'm just going to stay out of it.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of I just hope that he can help get the program going, not only in Nebraska football, but he can just be a good leader for overall Nebraska athletics, and that we can sort that out. So hopefully he does a good job, and yeah, that's really all we can hope for. Yeah.
I think he will. Honestly, like I think he came from the Tom Osborne type of like mindset, kind of like the excellence is like key or whatever, key to excellence or whatever you want to call it. And I just don't feel like he's gonna like, come in and be like, oh, I'm gonna half-ass it, right? Or whatever. I think he's
Yeah.
gonna come in and be like, hey, I want things to be like, I want to be the tip of the spear type of mindset. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
I want everyone performing at their best ability, right?
And he would have, or sorry, were you going to keep
No,
going?
you're good. You're good.
He would have, he took the UNO athletic director position. I think he was there for like 12, 13 years. And he may have very well knew that eventually Nebraska athletics was going to have some athletic director drama on their hands. And like, he's right down the road in Omaha. And
Yeah.
if he's already an athletic director at another Division I university right down the road, and he's familiar, he probably knew that this time was, this was going to come eventually in his athletic director career. And so, he's probably like, all right, it's about time. And it's, hopefully he can just, do positive things for everyone. I was kind of hoping we'd land Ed Stewart, and it's for this reason. Ed Stewart was I think, second in command associate athletic director for the Big 12 conference. And so I was kind of hoping like, all right, if we get Ed Stewart as AD, who also played here in the 90s, was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that until his name popped up. But I think I was kind of hoping, and if you look at my Twitter page, it's like I kind of want us to go back to the Big 12, and I'll always feel that way. I will always feel that way. And so, but I was thinking, okay, maybe we'd like get Ed Stewart as AD, like maybe we could eventually wreck shop in the Big 10 and then leave and go to the Big 12, and like if there's another conference reshuffle, which will probably happen the next decade. But that's what I was hoping. But Trev Alberts, I think, will do a good job. I hope that that's gonna work out. So we'll see. But that's probably everything.
Plus, it was kind of like one of those things too, where like, all right, Nebraska decided who was AD. Now I'm all on board, right? Like it's Trev Alberts, right? Like what more can you do? You have to support him now. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I look at it. Like I almost felt like the same way when Riley was like picked in a way, right? I'm like, well, all right, Nebraska thinks Mike Riley's the guy. I guess that's who I have to support for now, And then down the road, obviously, I was like, oh, dude, this guy sucks. But like, I kind of am in the mindset that you got to at least give the guy a chance.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I hate it when people are just like, I hate, he's hired. You got to support him.
Exactly. I was always skeptical about Mike Riley
Yeah.
because, and it wasn't because of Mike Riley himself. It was
Uh-huh.
because whenever they fired Bo and they hired Mike Riley, I think it was actually before they hired Mike Riley. But Amir
Uh-huh.
Abdullah, he was about to graduate and be gone. So he was he was our best player. He was at a place
Yeah.
where he could say whatever the heck he wanted to, and no one could
Yeah.
really do anything about it. And so Amir Abdullah, I believe he tweeted or something. Yeah, I think he tweeted like, and he was talking about Sean Eichhorst. He literally said, "This guy is a Wisconsin imposter. He came in
Uh-huh.
here to destroy our program, and now
Yeah.
and that's why we lost Bo." And essentially, that's what Amir Abdullah was saying. Like, this guy's phony. He doesn't care about the program. He just
Yeah.
wants to eventually get the Wisconsin athletic director job. And
Yeah.
he was literally a sabotage job from
Yeah.
somewhere. That's what Eichhorst was. He was some
Yeah.
phony athletic director who somehow was AD at Miami, and then we hired him because I don't know. I think Perlman hired him or something, and he just Bo was a ticking time bomb anyway. But
Yeah.
Eichhorst didn't help because he hired a below average coach,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
so
I remember too, like looking back on it and being like, oh, this was a dumb hire. But at the same time, I was still kind of in the mindset like, hey, we got to roll with this guy. Um, you know, but like also looking back on it, I was like, okay, I course out of all dudes, you're like, hey, I'm gonna pick Mike Riley. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't be like, I'm gonna look at, and I don't even know, I can't remember who was even in the coaching discussion, right? It's like I can't try and get, what's his name from like, oh fuck, I wish I knew what coaches were
okay,
like kind of up for positions, right? But you can't like go after one of these top guys instead
exactly.
after
Okay,
Pelini.
I'm looking at
Like,
something real quick.
okay.
Oh, you can keep going. Sorry.
But like when you look at it, you're like, man, Mike Riley, he couldn't even win the Big or Pac-12, right? Why couldn't we pick someone that could actually like win his division in another like
Yeah,
Pac-12 or SEC or whatever? Like, what I mean, you're not going after a top guy, you're going after a bottom feeder.
he was 80 and 91 in his college football head coaching. So he had a losing record, and
Yeah,
I think most of that was at Oregon State, if not all of
yeah,
it. But which is like, okay, they're Oregon State, like they're average, but like had a losing record, and we hired
yeah,
him to do what? You know. Another thing I want to bring up. This is something I don't even know if I've brought up on Twitter or anything, and it's a whole lot of what ifs. I don't want to dive too deep into this, but in 2014, the head coach of, or not the head coach, he was the like offensive coordinator at the offensive coordinator at East Carolina was Lincoln
okay,
Riley in 2014. And in 2015, Oklahoma hired him as their offensive coordinator and QB coach. But he
okay,
was like a name because I think East Carolina had a super good offense at that time. So Lincoln Riley was a name and a guy, and now he's a head coach at OU. We could have
yeah,
hired Lincoln Riley
yeah,
in 2015,
yeah. There you go.
potentially. Now, I don't know if that guy was even a name, but like that's like 4 times a better hire than Mike Riley.
Yeah,
And his first name is Lincoln, so people would have
right,
already liked him.
right.
And he had the same last name, so like he probably was like at least a candidate, kind
Yeah,
of maybe.
it would have been kind of like, whenever I wear that like frost warning shirt,
Uh
how
huh.
many shirts would you have
So
seen?
many.
Oh yeah,
If we had hired Lincoln Riley, I hate to get into this, but like if we had hired Lincoln Riley, I don't think we would have Frost as head coach because
oh no,
we wouldn't have needed to hire him,
uh,
and Frost would maybe still Frost probably would have gone to some other big program.
probably Florida.
Yeah, it would have been interesting how that would have gone down. I think it's too hard to tell, but I think Frost probably he was under a lot less stress when he was
Uh-huh.
coaching UCF, and he probably was just more so having fun. And I think at Nebraska, because he cares so much, and he, I personally don't understand why you'd feel a sense of pressure, but I'm kind of weird, um, like that. But he feels like a sense of pressure, so that's something that's definitely weighing on him as our
Uh-huh.
head coach,
Yeah,
and because I mean, the way my mindset is like I never feel pressure because I'm gonna go 100% for everything I do, and like I
Yeah,
don't care if I fail because at least I'm like if you're trying, in my opinion, like you're not actually failing. You're just
yeah,
it's part of being human. And so I
yeah.
wish that he would kind of have a better mindset there as head coach, but I don't really know for sure. I have never talked to him. Like he's head coach. I'm a fan, so it's hard to know.
I think that's the one thing that I do appreciate for like being that I was in the military is that like a lot of times I remember just like being like in a situation, I'd just be like, oh, this, yeah, we had so much training, right? And you'd be like, oh, like this is actually what we're going through right now. This is easy. You know what I mean? Like, I have no problem with this, like
Mhm.
there's no pressure. We just got to get this task done and that's it. You know what I mean? Like, I,
Yeah,
I guess I always kind of like thrive when the pressure is kind of on, I guess,
same.
you know? I don't
It's
know.
like you have a job to do, and the only choice you have is to just put your head down and go. Because
Yeah.
if you don't, then like that's the only choice you have. So
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much everything. I feel like we talked a lot about Husker football and the AD hire, and that was fun. And hopefully, we can do some more stuff in the future.
Yeah,
And it
dude.
was good meeting you in person, I guess, for the first
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
guess
So we'll
until,
plan on.
do you have any saying for your podcast, Twitter?
Normally I just end it with "Go Big Red," like in every
Oh
uh
yeah.
ending, right? Even when I like do the season previews for the opposite teams. So like, tonight when I do my Michigan season preview, I'll end it with "Go Big Red,"
Yeah, yeah,
just
because
to kind of
of
like
Go Big Blue.
poke the bear a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. But it was good. Thanks for coming on, and it's good talking with you.
Yeah.
And looking forward to the season.
Same.
I'll probably run into you like I'm gonna maybe in the Haymarket or something before or after a game. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, until then, um, you know, we'll stay in contact over Twitter and all that. So yeah,
Definitely.
thanks for watching, everybody. This has been fun. This is Huskers in Enemy Territory and Run the Damn Ball signing out. And until then, run the damn ball.
And "Go Big Red."
Yeah. All right. All right. So